Welcome to the show today, guys. We are coming to you from Bothell, Washington.
I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Yeah, of the Love Life Washington Conference. Now, if you guys have been tuning in my podcast for a while, you'll remember we did Love Life California. Pastor Jack Hibbs Church, the pastor that America needs but doesn't deserve, kind of like Batman. And we had 1,100 people there. We had 400, 500 online, and it was incredible. And people got involved with sidewalk counseling. Babies started getting saved because of Christians who went to that conference and were spurred on towards love and good deeds. And so we had friends up in Washington who were so inspired by that. Here we are at Love Life Washington Conference, and we're going to be sitting down with some of the wonderful speakers that are here today. First being Dr. Anthony Levantino, the former abortionist who was brought back to the Lord, brought back to the pro-life movement, and now is a voice for the very children that he will tell you he used to kill. A powerful voice now, and a reminder of God's redemptive plan of grace. And so buckle up. You're in for a treat. I'm Seth Gruber, and this is Unaborted. Tony, welcome to the show today.
Glad to be here, Seth.
Yeah, it's good to have you back, man. It feels like last year already. This 2022 has been so bonkers. It doesn't feel like that we were just at Jack's at the end of January, actually. But,
Exactly.
But here we are. You just got off stage. Powerful message. I was kind of running around. I heard some of it, but boy, was the crowd on their feet. And that's what's so inspiring about this season, I feel like, Tony, is that Christians are more excited than I've ever seen before in my lifetime for righteousness and for actually putting feet to their faith, not whining and moaning that evil people do evil things and we're losing the culture in America, but they're actually like, well, no, what are we going to do about it?
Exactly.
And you sense that excitement in more and more Christian churches and audiences today that are like, they're like, yes, this is what God loves, and I don't have to apologize for it. So it's awesome to hear them so receptive to you, brother. But hey, just really quickly, for those who might be new listeners to the podcast or watch this on YouTube and haven't heard your story, just give us 90 seconds because we talked about the whole story last time. People can go back and listen to that. But
Sure.
Just so people remember who you are.
When I graduated from medical school, I was pro-choice. This was a decision between a woman and her doctor, and nobody, including the baby's father, had anything to say about it. And I learned to do first and second trimester abortions, and I was really dedicated to it. And I did that for several years. Over the first 5 years in my medical practice, and especially my 4 years in New York, after being in Florida for a year, I did over 1,200 abortions, both first and second trimester, up to 24 weeks gestation. You got to understand something, and I know you know this, Seth. I mean, kids are viable at 22 weeks. And so we're killing viable children in those later procedures.
Right.
And as I said, I was quite dedicated to it. My wife and I were privileged to be able to adopt a little girl that we named Heather, and we had our son of our own named Sean. Heather was killed in an auto accident when she was 2 months short of her 6th birthday. And this was obviously life-changing. What happened after that, as I said, I went back to doing abortions, of course, but literally didn't, the next abortion I did was a second trimester D&E abortion, and literally tearing this kid apart. And I at the end of that procedure, I just looked at that pile of body parts, and it was like, this is someone's son or daughter. And all of a sudden, all the platitudes that had kept me going all those years just didn't mean a thing.
Wow. If you guys haven't heard Dr. Anthony share his entire story before, you can find that, many different talks on YouTube. You can hear our conversation together from January of this year. But having been on both sides of the aisle now, Tony, you have a very unique position and perspective. And it's an important one. And I know you know that. I know you understand the important kind of place that God has set you and the way in which you can speak to the issues. Because no one's better to expose the lies peddled by Planned Parenthood, and I call it the abortion industrial complex, than someone who was actually who they called their priests, right? Their saviors, their warriors, their doctors. So now having come full circle, and of course this, you've been with the pro-life movement for some time now. There's been a lot of lies being spread in
Quite a
this
bit.
post Roe versus Wade moment. Now, the entire
I think it's
abortion industrial
no, they're
complex.
not lies. They're disinformation.
Yeah, disinformation, misinformation, malinformation. Of course, the whole thing's built on lies, right? It's like, it reminds me of Elf with Will Ferrell, right? You sit on a throne of lies, and they really always have. But boy, have those lies sort of quadrupled themselves since June 24th, or since
absolutely.
the leak of Dobbs and the Roe versus Wade. So, as a doctor, as an OBGYN, as a man who used to kill children in the womb, and now you help save and contend for the rights of those babies. Let's talk about some of those lies right now, because boy, are they pervasive.
Absolutely.
I cover a lot of this stuff, but you're going to be able to speak to it with a different level of authority. So what were some of the lies we began seeing in this post-Roe season with the activist media, the Democrat Party, and the abortion industry?
It was absolutely fascinating to me. I've done presentations for several decades now,
Right.
and I started doing, and I've gotten into the habit of starting every presentation with a rather graphic but totally accurate description of a second trimester D&E abortion.
Yeah.
It's grisly. I've seen people pass out. I've had people throw up. I've had people walk out at the very beginning of presentations because of that. And I've even done it in front of Congress several times, which is really entertaining.
Yeah. Jeez.
And I've been honestly pleased when the best criticism that I've gotten from Planned Parenthood is that my description is emotional. Yes, it is. Nobody said it's inaccurate because
Yes.
it's not.
That's right.
I was fascinated, when June 24th came around. It's funny because I'd forgotten the date of June 24th, and June 23rd was when my daughter was killed.
Really?
And so it was June 24th when this decision came down. And the first thing that struck me was the news out that, and you heard this more than once, that suddenly appointments for vasectomies had suddenly gone through the roof. So now that Roe versus Wade is gone and you can't take the right to an abortion for granted, now you've decided that, gee, maybe I should be responsible about this. If I don't want to father
Tony,
a child,
come on.
maybe
you're a
I should just
conspiracy-
go and do something about it.
You're a conspiracy theorist, Tony. No, the abortion industry reliably informed me my entire life that while abortion is reproductive health care and it's not a person, we don't want to use it as birth control.
Yeah.
It's only bad if you use it as birth control, and yet they're proving it by saying, oh, shoot, now I might have to have responsibilities attached to my orgasms.
Exactly. The next thing that struck me with this is now, of course, we're getting hit with all the polls.
Okay.
67% of people approve of Roe versus Wade, and they want to see Roe versus Wade back in some,
That's the
whether
poll,
it's
yeah.
federal or state or whatever. 67% of people, I don't think 90% of people in this country truly, and I don't mean this insulting to the American people, have no idea what Roe versus Wade said.
Yep.
Quick primer. Roe versus Wade said that the federal government could not restrict abortion for any reason whatsoever in the first trimester. Pregnancy is divided into 3 pieces, first, second, and third trimester, about equal length. So up to 13 weeks from the last period, the state could not restrict abortion for any reason whatsoever. In the second trimester, from 13 to 27 weeks, they could regulate, they could pass public health type laws. You could say, for instance, that only doctors can do abortions. Now, people are stunned when I say that, because what do you mean, only doctors? You mean nurses are doing abortions? Yeah. Sometimes doctors who are not trained in abortion are doing abortions.
Yep.
And especially with chemical abortion, now anyone, and this is why it was, in my opinion, this is why I got fast-tracked through FDA way at the beginning, because it takes a degree of skill to do a suction D&C, and it takes a huge degree of skill to do a second trimester D&E abortion. These are
Yep.
dangerous procedures,
Right.
and there can be complications. And nobody wants to deal with complications. That's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But now, with chemical abortion, anyone who can write a prescription can be an abortionist. How nice.
Yep.
And what they said was in that second trimester, the state could regulate those kind of things, but not restrict the procedure.
Okay.
Once the patient was viable, that's at 27 weeks in 1973, 50 years ago,
Yeah.
then the state could, if it wished, restrict abortion.
Yeah.
Well, of course, medical science didn't stay still. The viability has gotten younger and younger and younger now, to the point that even the WHO acknowledges that viability is around 22 weeks.
Yeah.
and this is, as you know, it was the Sandra Day O'Connor once said that Roe was on a collision course with itself, and this is what she was talking about.
Yes, that's right.
So now we're rid of it. But people, so and not only that, but the companion decision, Doe, the problem with this, I'm sorry, I misspoke. The state could restrict abortion in the third trimester after 27 weeks, if they wish to, unless the woman's health was involved. Great. Well, I have a law degree. And what people don't understand about Roe v. Wade and what they don't understand about law is that every single word has meaning. Every word. So what you should ask is, what does health mean? Roe didn't tell us. Doe versus Bolton did.
Yeah.
It includes her physical health. Well, that's great. But how bad does her physical health have to be? It doesn't say. It includes her mental health.
Yeah.
Whoa, okay. I can see a situation maybe where somebody's schizophrenic and is going to have a psychotic break. I never saw one in all the years of practice I've been in like that. But let's say that maybe that can happen. But what about? But how bad does your mental health have to be? What about if you're depressed?
Yeah.
Or just upset or worried about your future?
Just bummed out.
It includes your economic health. Well, how rich do you have to be economically healthy? Doesn't say. And then,
Joe
of
Biden
course,
told me that poor kids are just as smart as white kids.
yeah.
So.
And my absolutist favorite was social health.
Yeah.
What the heck does that mean?
Yeah.
I try to illustrate this when I give talks, especially in college campuses. I can give you what I think was sincerely an honest look at what social health was. When I was doing abortions, and we very carefully counseled our patients. I was not running an abortion clinic. If you wanted to have a delivery, we were perfectly happy to take care of you. If you wanted to have an abortion, we were perfectly happy to take care of you. We were gonna be able to make money and take care of you no matter what you wanted. It wasn't like an abortion clinic where if you change your mind, I lose my income.
Right.
So we were very careful about that, and we carefully counseled and spoke with patients. Patient came in 17 years old for her 5th abortion, and made it. And I was talking to her about it, and she made it very clear to me that the reason that she wanted to have this abortion, she was quite firm about it, was that she didn't want to be pregnant during her senior prom. And I did that abortion.
I heard that coming.
I did that abortion. And that's a perfect example of social health. So this is where I was coming with this. And I'm sorry, I know it's a long way around.
No,
but
it's
Roe
important.
versus Wade means, and the fact that they say the state can restrict abortion except for health reasons, and then you define health so broadly
can drive a
that it's
Mack truck
meaningless.
through it.
It's absolutely meaningless. Roe versus Wade means any abortion, anytime, for any reason whatsoever, or no reason whatsoever. And so people saying, when they're claiming that 67% of people support Roe versus Wade, the vast majority of people have no clue what Roe versus Wade means.
Nailed it. So Tony, Gallup poll in 2019. Okay. What percentage of Americans, not Republicans or Democrats, Americans supported third trimester abortions? 13%.
Well, I was going to say it had to be a very low number.
So, if you actually report the stats honestly, as these activist media, I call them journalistic prostitutes for the culture of death, but if they were actually reporting this honestly, they would say only 13% of the American public supports Roe v. Wade. Because when they understand what Roe v. Wade said and did with its companion case, Doe versus Bolton, which is abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy for any reason or no reason at all, funded by the public dole, you got about 13% according to Gallup poll in 2019. A couple decades ago, Hadley Arcus, it's just a brilliant mind. Gosh, I wish I could get him in every pulpit in America. Interestingly, he's actually not a Christian, but he's so grounded in the natural law. It's like, dude, just come home to Jesus, man. But
just right on
the
the
divine
edge.
Logos of the universe, yeah. But he cited some fascinating research in his book, Natural Rights and the Right to Choose. And one of the stats he had done this decades ago was that only 1 in 10 people could give an accurate account of the Roe versus Wade decision.
Oh, absolutely.
So, anyways, it's been true for some time.
I completely agree with you. Now I'm going to hit you with a stat that you may or may not, and I know how well read you are, but you may not be aware of this, and I'll bet the majority of your audience isn't aware of it.
Okay.
How many obstetrician gynecologists are willing to do abortions?
Oh, yes, you've told me this before.
Okay. This has been studied 3 times.
Wow.
Peer-reviewed journal articles published has been studied 3 times in the last decade. And the average number that they come up with over those 3 studies is that 85+% of obstetrician and gynecologists refuse to do abortions. 85%. I'm retired from active clinical practice. I retired 4 years ago.
Okay.
And I retired to Arizona, but I do teach medical school, and I love teaching students. I've done almost every kind of practice there is over the years, and teaching is my passion. Awesome. I really do enjoy working with the students. So even though I retired to Arizona and left, I still teach in a New Mexico medical school.
Okay.
And I course direct. Yes, I am retired, and I do love being retired. I absolutely love waking up in the morning and not knowing what day it is and not caring. But I do continue to teach there. And so 1 month, 5 weeks out of the year, I do teach this course on reproductive medicine and endocrinology. Okay. And I think it's important. Not only do I enjoy teaching, but it's very important for pro-life physicians, the majority of us, to be a presence in front of these medical students.
Yes.
Because these medical students are being bombarded.
Yep.
Just like the rest of the culture is.
are.
And they're being heavily pressured to practice abortion.
So, Tony,
and it's
let's
important
talk
for them
about
to
that.
understand that if you're pro-life,
That's powerful.
you are not in the minority.
That's
You are the
powerful.
majority.
So, brother, that's powerful. I'm glad you said that. And so you just reminded me of something. So you have ACOG, American College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, radically pro-abortion. Just for the people listening, just so you know, a brief, let me give you just a 20-second vignette so you know how pro-abortion and demonic this organization is. They've opposed every state-level pro-life legislative bill for the last couple decades. Or something.
Since before Roe.
Yeah, like the most common sense ones that pro-choice moderates in America would support, like admitting privileges for abortionists at a local hospital or whatever. And then
They wouldn't even think of doing that for me doing a hysterectomy.
that's
though.
right, yeah. And then Elena Kagan, okay, before she was a Supreme Court justice, colluded, and that is the right term, colluded with ACOG to change their definition of partial birth abortions from a never necessary procedure to save mom's life to a sometimes necessary procedure to save mom's life. And for you guys tuning in, partial birth abortion in 20 seconds, you deliver the baby forcibly by their legs, but you leave the head and shoulder blades in the vaginal canal. Then you shove Metzenbaum scissors into the back of the neck. You open a hole, you stick a suction vacuum catheter tube, and you suction the brain out. It's the closest thing to a French guillotine for unborn children. So she colludes. By the way, we have the paper trail to prove this. Elena Kagan colludes with ACOG, the American College of Obstetricians. You're supposed to be about the protecting babies. That's you have two patients, mom and baby. Okay, so that Bill Clinton could have the science on his side when he vetoed the Partial Birth Abortion Ban Act. So just so we understand how wicked ACOG is, and now you've got the licensing arm of ACOG that license doctors, whether obstetricians get licensed. And I'll wrap up with this, Tony. 4 weeks ago, they just said we are looking into removing the medical licenses of obstetricians and gynecologists who share abortion misinformation.
And there we
hey,
go
Tony,
again.
can we trust these people to define what misinformation is and accurate obstetrician and prenatal information is?
The cards are stacked. ACOG it's really interesting. I was a member of ACOG. I was proud to be a member of ACOG. You go through your training, you go through all those years, you pass the certifying exams. I mean, you have arrived when you become a fellow in a professional organization, and it meant a lot to me. And then I was very privileged. Now, I had already stopped doing abortions, and interestingly enough, I was very privileged because I was asked to become the Section 9, District 2, Section 9 Vice Chair of ACOG in New York. I mean, this is really, again, it was significant, and I was pleased to do it. Yeah. You're on the very, very bottom rung of the of the organization, just above a member, but becoming more actively involved.
Okay.
And I served in that position for 2 years. Normally, it's almost a matter of it's almost set in stone. From vice chair to become chairman, and you go up you start climbing the ladder.
Yeah.
I was called by the chairman just before that would have occurred and told specifically that it has been decided that you shall not rise. And it was pretty obvious why it was decided that I would not rise. I remained a member of ACOG for many years. Now, ACOG has been an absolutely pro-abortion organization
Yeah.
from very early on. I know that they would argue with that. We are not a pro-abortion organization. We are a pro-choice organization. ACOG
Distinction
has-
without a difference.
I did an entire lecture for the American College of, for APLOG, the American Association of Pro-Life
Pro-life
OBGYNs.
obstetricians, yeah.
I served on their board for 5 years, and a couple of years ago at their conference, fortunately it was 2020 with with COVID, and we had to do it virtually, but I did an entire lecture on ACOG's history in the abortion industry,
Good for you.
and had a list of every single Supreme Court case, i.e., every single abortion case that even touched on abortion that has come before the Supreme Court. They submitted an amicus brief, and I went through every one of them.
Yep, they did.
It came down ethical opinion or committee opinion 385, I think it was.
Okay.
I think I'm quoting it accurately. Basically, was telling the membership that you either should be doing abortions or it is unethical not to refer for an abortion.
Yep.
And if you are obligated as an obstetrician gynecologist, if you are not doing abortions, to practice near a physician who does abortions and refer to that physician. Essentially,
Wow.
there was a lot of things that they said, but essentially that's what it was about. And this was, for me and a lot of obstetrician gynecologists, the last straw. I resigned from ACOG over that. And
Good.
it was very interesting, and other physicians did as well, because it gets to the point where it's like, look, I cannot financially support this organization any longer. I gave up my fellowship, and it had meant a lot to me. But it was very interesting, and I still have the emails. You know what I'm going to do for you? Because we are good friends. I'm going to bundle them up. I'm going to send them to you.
Oh, yes. Wonderful.
From the executive director of ACOG at the time, a Dr. Hale. I'd stopped, I just ended my membership, didn't make a thing out of it. And of course, as with many organizations and even HBO and DirecTV, after you leave them for a while, they come back and we'd like you back. So I wrote a letter to ACOG when I got that letter. Of course, it's a form letter. And I said, you know what, I sent a letter to the organization about why I resigned, but I never even got the courtesy of a reply. And it was very nice. Dr. Hale, give him credit, contacted me. And I really appreciated that. This is the medical director, the executive director of the organization. So Dr. Hale was nice enough to contact me, and this was wonderful, and we exchanged emails. And basically, we went through that very same discussion. We are not a pro-abortion organization. We are a pro-choice organization. And I've got to dig out the emails as well since I've seen them. But, basically it was like, well, gee, that's great. In a way, to me, it was a little like Biden. I'm going to be the unifier. Well, please tell me one thing you have done to unify the country.
That's
and it was,
right,
in a way, it was like with Dr. Hale, could you please tell me one way in which you are supporting me?
Yeah.
And I didn't know at the time because his research had come out. And 85% of your membership in terms of being, of supporting
Right.
both sides of this argument. It's very difficult to do. So, yes, there's a tremendous amount of pressure.
Yeah.
And now that you're right, they're to the point where they are basically threatening physicians and residents with their licensure. And that's their livelihood.
And that was the board level of ACOG, right, Tony? But the Biden administration, at the same time that came out about ACOG and the board and all that stuff, is saying that they're trying to amend this federal code. I forget the federal code number. Go to my podcast on Aborted, guys. It's there. But to make pregnancy a condition of sex, which is hilarious because now we all know what women are.
Pregnancy, a condition of sex.
In the federal code,
that's-
so that, right, when you tell Democrats they might not be able to kill as many babies, Tony,
Right.
they can suddenly define a woman. It's hilarious. So that they can go after pro-life obstetricians who don't want to perform abortions under pregnancy discrimination lawsuits. That it's pregnancy discrimination because you don't want to kill the baby.
Exactly.
So anyways, let's close down with this, Tony. I'm going to ask you this final question. Where does all this end? If the 85% of pro-life obstetricians that are in the majority continue to confess private beliefs about their convictions but not stand against this regime, where does this end?
Boy, we could be talking for hours because I didn't even finish answering your question. I will answer that question about, the whole thing about when Roe went down. Next, we heard that doctors can't treat ectopic pregnancies. Rubbish.
Right.
Doctors can't treat miscarriages. Rubbish.
Yeah.
And the other thing, of course, is that we need abortion to save women's lives. I've talked about that 1,000 times.
Yeah.
With the age of viability 22 weeks, there are rare cases where a woman will die before 22 weeks if you don't end that pregnancy. That
Right.
does happen. In those cases, no organization, no church that I'm aware of, APLOG, which is vehemently against elective abortion, has no problem with separation of mother and baby when her life depends on it.
Yeah.
However, the vast majority of those cases occur after 22 weeks.
Yep.
I worked in a tertiary medical center in upstate New York for over 10 years. I am a pro-life obstetrician gynecologist. I have terminated, they've stolen the word, ended hundreds of pregnancies to save women's lives. And I have not had to deliberately kill a single baby in the process.
Yep.
Did they all make it? No, but they all had a chance.
Yeah.
Where does it end? It ends when people who say that they are pro-life, it ends when churches who profess to be pro-life finally become actually pro-life and get militant about this.
Yeah.
An author named Rahi, he was talking specifically about the Catholic Church, but I feel that it extends to all of Christendom. He wrote an article called Pact with the Devil. It's an interesting article to read. But I often quote the last line of that article because I think it's prophetic. If the church flatulent doesn't become the church militant, it will soon become church irrelevant. It ends when people who say that they are pro-life act that way, get active, get in front of the clinics,
That's right.
get active politically.
Amen.
That's when it ends.
That's right. Amen. Only in action is freedom, is what Bonhoeffer would say.
Absolutely.
Tony, thank you, brother.
My pleasure.
For your time.
Good seeing
Wonderful. Guys, thanks for tuning into the show today. Amazing conversation. Share this widely, please, with your pro-choice friends and your apolitical Christian friends who don't want to get political because they'll harm their witness or harm the unborn children you fail to advocate for politically. Go to SethGruber.com to see my speaking schedule, to book me for an event. Go to thewhiterose.life, not .com, thewhiterose.life, to become an ally of the White Rose and help me rebuild the White Rose resistance for this generation against our silent but far more deadly holocaust of abortion before it's too late. Until next week, I'm Seth Gruber, and this is Unaborted.